Welcome to the Parenting Show. We are thrilled to have you joining us today. It's a very important topic, a very heavy topic in some cases, but important for us to be talking about. We're talking about addiction issues in the family. I'm Jennifer Anderson, joined on the couch by parenting expert and my co-host, Alyson Schaefer.
Hello, good to be here.
Hello. It is a heavy topic, and it's compounded by the fact that over the last couple of years, we've gone through a lot more than we are normally used to with a pandemic, with things being closed, a lot of mental health issues. And so all of this has been accumulating for a lot of families, and addiction becomes one of the ripple effects of the things that people are going through. Am I correct?
You are very accurate. And it dawned on me that in all the years that we've been doing this show, we've actually never talked about this. And when you think of the incident rates of addiction in family and how it impacts family, I realized that's like a big hole. Mm-hmm. We've really missed this, and I think there's a lot of stigma, and it doesn't get discussed. And there isn't that many resources that are kind of public resources. You have to kind of go hunting, and so I thought, let's take this time to talk about it. We do see that there's a comorbidity, like a correlation between people that have mental health issues and addictions, and that makes sense because we are often attempting to solve problems by self-medicating and kind of relieving symptomatology with other sources, and they're not healthy sources, and there's an addiction cycle that can get started. And it's really important that we see it in the context that if one person in your family is dealing with this, it is impacting everybody in the family. And so really seeing it as your family has an addiction issue, not just this one outlier. And we're talking about any member of the family. That can be a parent, that can be a child, and we certainly did see the spike in youth mental health issues, and with it came increased drug use. It's just also, we're living in a society now where it's pretty easy to get drugs. I hate to say it, it is part of youth culture, and they're everywhere. There's now apps that'll just deliver drugs to a drop-off location. A lot of kids get their first access to drugs actually in the family medicine cabinet because we leave stuff lying around and they start to experiment. And a lot of times it's kids selling their siblings Adderall and Ritalin to other people that are, A students that want to, get that little jolt so that they can study harder, and it seems innocent enough. And of course there's vaping is everywhere now. That becomes the new in vogue drug. And since we've legalized cannabis, every corner store has a cannabis store. So this stuff is all around our kids. We should be talking about it.
Right. And I don't really understand why we're not. And there's certain topics that we've covered over the years and we've talked about, but that always seem to be a little hush-hush. It's, whether it is mental health, although there is more information and resources available than ever before.
Right.
The same with therapy and counseling. And, a lot of people, and maybe that's a generational thing.
Well, it's for sure one of the silver linings that came with the pandemic, that suddenly everybody put money and budget into mental health because we were in a crisis. And so suddenly everyone was talking about mental health, and it was okay to talk about mental health. And I hope that continues. I hope that, for example, a lot of workplaces had mental health wellness programs brought into the workplace through webinars and whatever. And it's like, keep them, even as we come back to work and as things get back to the new normal or whatever you want to say, I hope those budgets stay. That's something that is constantly a way of supporting your workers. So, I think we did talk about it more. And perhaps in another 20 years, we'll be talking more about addiction and not having it so swept under the carpet. It's not a new thing.
No.
The drug of prevalence can change. Like I said, there's kind of fads and things that go on. I would say that with parents, one of the more common things that I hear is they toss the word addiction around pretty loosely when they talk about, my kid's addicted to her phone. There's a difference between behavioral addictions and substance addictions. I think that's a really important piece to say.
Okay.
So there are behavioral addictions. You can have porn addiction. You can have gambling addictions. You can have gaming addictions. They for sure are a category that are recognized by the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, which is sort of like our criteria for assigning, you meet the criteria according to the DSM for having this mental health issue. And so we do have a category for those things. But there's very few people that meet the criteria for that, just FYI. And one of just for parents to know, again, as you're like throwing this word out loosely, overusage or even abuse is different than addiction.
Right.
Using a substance, abusing a substance, addicted to a substance is kind of like moving along a trajectory that happens. And so, is there excessive phone use for teen girls on their social media? Are they on their phones all day? Do they get mad when you take it away from them and have a hissy fit? I mean, parents drive their kids to the emergency ward because their kids are so freaked out because their parent took away their phone. This is like a common occurrence for people in the emergency ward at sick kids hospital. So is this an indicator of an addiction? No, that's not. There is a criteria. You have to meet it. And one of the things is prolonged. It's got to be going on for a while is one thing that's included in this. But also the fact that it's interfering with functioning. So I would say, you could argue how much a phone interferes.
Right.
Could they study better if they weren't on their phone all the time? Would they pay attention better in class if they weren't on their phone all the time? Absolutely. But to really be addicted to your phone, that's to meet the true criteria, or with gaming or whatever. And some people don't even agree with the DSM regardless.
Right. So I understand what you're saying, and we have viewer questions
Yeah.
that come in. So one is very similar. My 16-year-old son is a gamer. I've told him that I think he's addicted, which is what you're saying. He says it's under control. How do you know if someone has become addicted, and how do you make someone change their behavior when they don't think it's an issue? I know you've already kind of answered this, but I guess my question is, if you think they are just abusing this type, of whether it's a phone or gaming, or how does a parent kind of sway them into a different direction? Mm-hmm. I know you can't change them, but how do you make them understand that maybe they should be concentrating on some other things as well?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is when you're looking at usage, you want to find out, is this person like an aficionado? Like, I joke about the fact that we sort of give tech a bad name. And it's usually from parents who aren't tech savvy themselves. And so if you had a child that like all they wanted to do is like play guitar, and they were in their room for hours and hours learning guitar riffs, you'd go, I have a musician. Mm-hmm. And if you have somebody who's loving chess, and playing chess all the time, you say, look, I'm raising the next Bobby Fischer, or I have a bookworm, my kid's constantly reading. We would say that with great parental pride. But nobody walks around going, look at my kid, they're the best at Fortnite. Yeah. So there is a bias against technology. So we have to find out, when they're involved in their gaming, is this just like a passionate hobby that they really enjoy? Or are they evading other parts of their life? And this is what I'm talking about, like, if it is an escape hatch where I don't have to face the realities of, dealing with my parents, or I can avoid doing my homework, or this is the only place I have friends because I haven't figured out how to get embedded in my friend group in my community. These are not healthy signs. This is showing an unbalanced life. So I would talk about it in terms of like, it's great to have to be passionate about something. It's great to dedicate your free leisure time to something, but let's make sure that it's not squeezing out these other important parts of a balanced day.
Right.
And so if we ask, what do you enjoy about it? There's a lot you can glean from watching them play or watching how they use it. It's like a little keyhole window into their internal workings, and get fascinated, get interested in that. But I think the conversation is, again, not about, we talk about this all the time, when you just put rules thrown down from on high, you're going to raise a child that either rebels openly and just says, I won't have it, or they'll start sneaking, which is another problem. They'll start lying, they'll start sneaking. You haven't really addressed the problem. So getting into these dialogues where you're showing true loving concern, that I get that you're enjoying this, but as a parent, I'm looking after your whole well-being. And you can use third-party research.
Right.
You can send them to a website, or you send them a link to a website and say, look, hey, I just read this fascinating article a lot of these things really threw up some red flags for me. I'd really like you to take a minute to read it. Maybe we can talk about it later. And so you're going at it with loving, care, and kindness, knowing that like part of my job is I'm supposed to like make sure that you've got the guardrails and you don't go too far off them. And I want to give you that latitude with your passions, but I also want to make sure that you're healthy and that you don't have gamer's thumb and carpal tunnel syndrome at 12. Whatever.
That's right. And have these conversations not in the heat of the moment.
Yeah, it's never in the heat of the moment. The problem with having conversations when people start getting emotional is that you end up wanting to win a fight and you get defensive about your position. And so you're not really in true dialogue. You're not in that true communicating, opening up to one another, and you're unlikely to have a successful outcome. Things can wait. If they've been gaming this long, it can wait until there's a better time to talk.
Right. Another question for you. My husband and I disagree about our teen drinking beer and smoking cannabis with his hockey team. My husband is the coach of the team, and he thinks it's innocent fun, but I worry that this is early drug use that will lead the way to irreversible addiction. This difference of opinion is creating marital issues.
This wouldn't be the first family that had differences of opinion around parenting that caused marital conflict. Mm-hmm. And if you need to seek marital counseling, it's highly effective. I would absolutely recommend that. But in terms of working through it, it's important that you have these conversations of differences sidebar from your kids. They don't need to hear the two of you bickering. Kids already feel very responsible for their parents' marital satisfaction. Mm-hmm. When marriages end, kids will say it was my fault. It wasn't their fault. There was lots going on that they couldn't communicate and get in aligned and whatever, but kids do internalize that. So have those sidebar, conversations that out of earshot of the kids. It's okay to have different parenting opinions, and it's okay even for your kids to know that you're different people and you approach things in different ways. It might cause some conflict where it's like, well, I don't know, my dad's lenient, he's okay with drug use, and my mom is not. You don't have to adopt somebody's values that aren't your own. You can say, I disagree with it. It upsets me. I don't want to see it. I don't condone it. I don't want to witness it. You don't have my permission. Mm-hmm. I don't believe in it. Your father feels differently. And they will they'll act accordingly, and say, oh, my dad says yes, my mom says no.
But is the acting accordingly then just going to dad?
It may well be, but what I'm saying is the child still has a relationship with one of the parents, in this example with the mother, who's going to say, my mom's a good egg. She cares for me. She sees the world differently than my dad. What does she? Why is she so in her position? Maybe she knows something. Maybe she's somebody I should listen to. So I think you put your stake in the ground. You state your position, and then the child can make those decisions around it. It might mean less usage, but I don't think you're gonna. Again, I'm assuming that she's talked to her partner and she's tried to present him with whatever information, but if he's dissuaded, he's dissuaded. That's the state of the nation. I find it interesting that too. Again, so many people say, "Oh, it's so good for kids to be on team sports, and they're so healthy and whatever." And there's a lot of partying and drugs that goes on with team sports. Just saying, by the way. Again, it's part of that kind of youth culture, and that's sort of what the dad is saying. And I think that and they say, "Well, I did it, and nothing bad happened to me," or those are some of my most memorable moments of being on the team or something. So he's kind of projecting all of his stuff. But I think Mom has a very good point that the truth is, even though it's condoned and accepted and it's part of culture, it is addictive, it is illegal. I just let her make her statements. That's the best she can do.
Okay.
We have to remember that the thing with parenting is that there are the limits.
It's hard.
Well, it is hard. But the thing is, you have to know when you've done the best you can do, and that's all there is. Right? That's the best you can do, because other than that, the cost is going to get higher, because now it's going to get into a divorce, and now it's going to get into broken relationships, and it's like that cost is too high.
Yes, but I know that a lot of people, and I'm just looking for the point that we made, just the idea of, people worrying about if they start, like one of the other questions, right? If you start small, if you start a little bit, is it going to lead to an addiction? That's the concern for a lot of parents.
Of course. That
they are allowing this leniency.
Yeah.
That's a loose term, because it's not really allowing, it's just staking, stating your opinion and then letting it go, but it also would be worrisome for that parent because it could progress into
Right.
something more.
Yes, and so I think that's imperative that people need to appreciate that things get identified as being addictive substances. It means that it creates an addiction cycle whereby you need to use more to get the same effect. You get cravings and withdrawal when you don't have it, and you increase your usage. And so we know that there are addictive substances, nicotine, alcohol. These things are legalized, but that's because we made them no longer illegal because we were like just filling the jails with, like it's like just because something is legalized, it doesn't mean it's good for you. But it becomes part of culture, but it's still an addiction. It's still an addictive substance. So it's important for us to know that children's brains are at a different part of development than an adult brain, which is why these things are often age limited. They don't make good decisions. Their brain's being rewired. They're more likely early exposure to addictive substances increases the likelihood that you're going to be addicted. When you look at the 30-year-old alcoholic and you say, when did you have your first drink? It's more likely that they're going to have had it at 13 or 14 than at 17 or 19.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So we know this. We've done a lot of research about this. So when you're having any exposure to an addictive substance, you're playing with the devil. And it's not about character. It's not about, oh, if you have a strong will, you can quit vaping. It's like you're taking a substance that that by its very design is making you need more, have another hit, have another drag. Like that's you're playing with the devil. So it's not to be taken lightly.
Right.
Not to be taken lightly, these early exposures.
Another question for you. Do energy drinks like Red Bull count as an addiction? My kids swear they need to drink these to help them study for tests.
Well, I caffeine, again, this is one of those, like, it's everywhere in the culture. Is caffeine an addictive substance? I believe it is. So yeah, you can get addicted. And it's interesting too, because with addiction, it's about patterns and repetitions. And so, like, even if you can be addicted to just having a Friday night Red Bull. Even though it's like it's not every day, it can be the Friday night thing, just the same way we see this with people who don't drink all week and then they'll binge drink on Friday.
Right.
But they're like, no, but I can go 5 days, I can go 6 days without drinking.
Social smokers, you see it in a lot of different addictions.
Yeah. So it's the nature of the beast. Now, what's interesting is that usually we were talking about having mental health issues and then people trying to resolve symptomatology. So drug choice is sort of based on which symptoms they're trying to alleviate. So here we're talking about somebody who is looking for the usefulness of taking this drug is to increase their focus and concentration so that they can study. Caffeine will make you focused. It'll get rid of your brain fog or whatever. So there's the usefulness of it. So the question becomes, how can we help kids get that same end result, the same goal of the drug, but through positive means that aren't going to create having negative substances or poor substances that have other side effects in their body.
Right.
So what would that look like? Would that be like, putting on noise canceling headphones and would that be getting better sleep? Like let's tackle the problem in a bunch of different ways. So we see that people that have a lot of anxiety tend to drink because alcohol is a depressant. And so people say, I drank because I get nervous in social situations. And so this is like a social lubricant so that I can like talk to people at parties or whatever. And so it's calming them down and it's opening them up. So the question becomes, how can we give you social skills to get over your anxiety and help you learn to chat at parties without needing the crux, the tool that can lead to a real addiction problem?
So who can teach them that tool?
Treatment centers, counselors. That's where you're basically going to get that information. But these are teachable life skills, and a lot of people that do group counseling, like it's really important to hear other people's stories and hear how other people overcame things, and to really switch the thinking. Certainly, for example, alcohol in teen culture is very glorified. And people will brag about, I got so hammered and whatever. They'll brag about it and post about it and everything else. It's like a badge of honor to get drunk. And what we don't hear about is the kid who got the DUI, the kid who's being charged with assault because he, went too far on a girl and didn't get consent. And like, there's all, accidents that wind people up in hospitals. There's all kinds of negative consequences. Nobody's posting those. No one's talking about those. So society celebrates this one story and they don't realize, like, why are we laughing at youth who are getting into all these dangerous situations and setting themselves up for, like, being in AA in another 10 years. So we do take it too lightly. We do take it too lightly.
We focused a lot on the kids and addiction for kids. We have a question here about parents. My husband is a drinker. When he drinks too much, he can get agitated and then starts yelling at the kids. He would never hit them or hurt them, but I'm worried about them being raised with a drunk and angry father. How bad is this for them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard one to quantify how bad is it for them. Obviously, what we know is that it would be a better condition if they had a happy and engaged sober father.
Right.
And we know that addictions move through families. You have a predisposition, not only modeling, but also in your genes, gene expression. So you now are passing on an increased likelihood that your child is also going to have these issues. But yes, it's going to strain the relationship. And those early formative years are really important. So the question is, can she respond in a way, obviously, like, for me, my most important thing is I want intact families. The situation has to be pretty bad for an intervention that would involve children's aid or something. Like, once you get in the system, once you get kids in foster care removed from their parents, like, things really go from bad to worse. So we really want to work on what could be here. And I think mom's got a big role in, first of all, helping the kids to understand it's about dad's problem. Don't internalize it. Don't take it personally. Mom needs to be that buffer and interfere. She needs to be the adult to the adult to protect her kids from that. It's not okay. And that conversation needs to be escalated where she really says, this is not acceptable behavior in this home. You need to get help. And hopefully he will, or, at some point we do have to make ultimatums and say, I'm unwilling to stay in this relationship if you can't get this under control. And that's very scary for people to say because they don't want to lose their partner. They love them. But sometimes it's those ultimatums that find those people say, it's gotten so bad, I'm going to lose my family. I better take this seriously. I better get the help I need. And then when they're in recovery, they're like, thank God, thank you. You saved my life. I didn't want to be that person. So it takes a lot of courage to do it, but kids come first. We need to be the adults, and you're actually doing a kind thing for that person who's refusing help.
Right. And having those conversations with the kids to let them understand that it's not on them.
Yeah.
It's not about them. It's not on them. It's not something that they need to worry about.
And again, this is where, changing the conversation about addiction, it's not a character flaw. Like, it is a disease. Like, it's literally a physical process. You couldn't say, like, a better person wouldn't have gotten addicted. And one of the, you lose emotional regulation depending on which drug you're on, and this is how this manifests in this family. That's not the way it manifests for all people, but...
No, and it's interesting because one of the points that we have up is children with negative early childhood memories are more likely to start using drugs. However, it is not limited to a particular race, demographic, background, whatever it may be.
So
it is
subjective.
it's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, so when they do screening tests, for example, we have an opioid crisis, and there's a lot of reasons behind that. But if doctors, airy-fairy after a surgery, put people on pain medication without doing a screener for the likelihood of this person becoming addicted, not being able to handle it, from prescribed, there's other medications that can be given for pain medication. So one of the screeners will say, give us an early recollection from your childhood. And if it is a recollection that either has drugs in the memory, or if it's about someone getting hurt or something fearful, those people, the rating score for that person, that puts them in the highest category. So it's very interesting how these there's other things too. Does anyone else in your family use? Are there other substances that you have issues with? There's other questions on the test. but that's a really important one. And those early memories are very subjective. Like, why did they remember that memory? Why is that memory important to them today that they can remember it from back then? So if you have an early memory that sort of says life is scary, life is dangerous, life presents harm to me, your outward approach to life is going to have that perspective to
Right.
it. And that's kind of like a bit of a narrative that is more likely attached with people that then use drugs to escape from the pain, the hurt, the harms, the stressors of the world.
Right. Where can people find more information about you,
Yep.
about these topics?
Absolutely. So my website, AlysonSchaefer.com, is really like the clearing place where I have all my social handles, all my resources, all the links to my podcast. And so just Google in there and see what content you can find there. And of course, when you're looking for any medical information, as you know, there's a lot of Dr. Nobodies out on the great World Wide Web. So make sure that when you're doing your research that you're going to a qualified institution. So go to a renowned addiction center and read their information there. I wouldn't be putting out questions on Twitter to your pals.
No.
There is just as much misinformation, but there is information out there. Yeah.
And certainly, so addiction centers, that area is obviously very helpful for addiction. Counseling?
Yep, and counseling as well. Yeah, people specialize in drug counseling. The problem is that we don't have very much in the pediatric. Pediatric addiction is like a bit of a different animal, and we don't have as many resources as we need. Mm-hmm. And it's really hard to think about putting your child in a residential treatment center. There aren't very many. They're very expensive. Mm-hmm. It separates them from their peer groups, and that could be for good or bad, because sometimes they're hanging out with people that are
Right.
part of their drug phenomena. But it's also a risk to put them in a situation where everybody that they're going to now associate with is clearly, trying to be a non-user. But so I'm not poo-pooing them. Don't get me wrong, but we don't have very many resources. They're not funded appropriately. They're very hard to get into, and would just be really nice to not need them.
Well, and we only have a few seconds left, but the thing that I've always loved the most about this show is just telling people they're not alone. So I think this is one of the most important issues we've talked about in the over 300 shows that we've done, to let people know they aren't alone. There's resources, there's information that's available to them.
You can be a really wonderful parent with a very lovely family and still have a child who goes down the slippery slope into addiction. Yeah. And kids recover. Kids do recover.
Thank you for the info. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time on The Parenting Show.